It has been one calendar year since Tony Khan feared for his life and fired the man known as CM Punk. 1 year to almost the day that we are making this video. And instead of our traditional weekly review of the world of wrestling, we will be previewing the All Out Supercard that's coming up later on this week. And we will be talking about what happened in WWE. But myself and Mr. Robert Lentini wanted to focus on the year that was and go through the timeline of CM Punk leaving AEW, landing in WWE, and where both of these promotions are since that date. Mr. Robert Lentini, before we get into it, because me and you come from very different sides of the street on this. I am very much the AEW fan. You are the wrestling fan, but you're in bed with the WWE. Let's be honest. You are also a diehard, probably your favorite wrestler of all time, Mr. CM Punk. Myself, I miss the glory days of CM Punk. So all I've really gotten is the Colt Cometa podcast and on of this man. So I have my own inkling and perception of what CM Punk is. So I'm interested to go through this timeline. But you myself, sir, it's been a year. Have you recovered yet?
No, I have not recovered. I'll never recover from it. Every time they won't let me recover. As we'll go through this timeline, they won't let me recover. As evident by the main event of the All Out. We'll go through it all, but they won't let fans recover who are CM Punk fans that are scarred from it and just want to move on and still watch AEW, WWE. They just won't let us do it. I don't know why. I don't know why Tony Khan won't give us that luxury of moving on, like we all so desperately need to.
I don't want to get too dark 2 minutes into this podcast, but when it comes to abusive relationships, it usually is the abusers that like, oh, let's just forget about it and move on. Starting off September 2nd, 2023. Okay, CM Punk had the fight with the Young Bucks after making fun of Hangman Adam Page and the rest of them. I'm working with a bunch of idiots, whatever the quote may be. Has the fight with Omega and the Young Bucks. We don't know exactly what happens. He leaves for a long time, comes back, has a whole new show dedicated to him, and at the Wembley, the first pay-per-view at Wembley for this organization, All In, has a fight backstage with Jungle Boy Jack Perry, which forces on September 2nd, the week of All Out last year, Tony Khan to not come out in front of the crowd, if I remember correctly. He did it from a backstage interview saying that his life was threatened. Oh, Bob has something to say. His life was threatened, and CM Punk is no longer with the company. Bob, what do you remember from that date, and what am I forgetting?
Well, he also addressed there was a collision in Chicago, of course, because All Out's in Chicago. Collision was in Chicago. He did address the crowd, too, off camera before the show, and he was like a substitute teacher sitting on a chair on the entrance ramp discussing, life and all the troubles. But he did address it and got booed. But he did. I will give Tony credit for that. He did say his life was in danger ridiculously, but he did also stand up there like a man in Chicago and say, I had to fire your favorite star.
Yep, not the easiest way to go about doing it. But yeah, CM Punk fired. Was this a surprise to you after hearing what happened? We still didn't know. We didn't see any footage. We didn't know anything that happened with the Young Bucks back then. We just knew it was kind of rocky and shit was going on. And you can go back to the fight, and we will in a second, about who was in the right, Jack Perry for calling him out during the pre-show match against Hook, or CM Punk overreacting backstage before the biggest show that this company has ever had. He has a fake championship belt that he's walking around because he's still mad that he lost it due to the original suspension. CM Punk is in his own world in this. Who was right, who was wrong is not really what I want to talk about here. But in this moment, Tony Khan firing this man, was this a surprise to you that week leading up to it that CM Punk was no longer with AEW?
No, just because of the backstage stuff. There was so much shit during that week. Christopher Daniels was banned from backstage. Now it's all coming back to me. CM Punk was throwing his weight around like a maniac. He wanted to get out of there. It was pretty obvious. You look back on it, he wanted to get the fuck out of there. And he eventually got out of there. But the whole situation was a disaster. After 2 years ago now, Brawl Out, which you referenced earlier with the brawl backstage with the Elite. Ever since then, I felt like it was kind of dead. And then Tony Khan was just desperately hanging on. No, I was not surprised he got fired.
They made steps to try and keep CM Punk and AEW. Each made steps to try and keep this thing working, whether they wanted to or not. They did try to keep the money flowing in. They did ban certain people from Collision, did not allow certain people to show up on Collision, whether CM Punk wanted that or whether other people wanted that or whether Tony Khan wanted that. Either way, you had your corner. I have mine. We'll keep moving forward and keep making the company both successful. Again, not trying to throw blame on anyone for that, but there definitely was different sides of the sandpit, so to speak. And yet it still didn't work out when we were all into the same building. building for the biggest show. Again, I have to keep referencing that. This was by far the biggest show in AEW's history, the most important night in AEW's history, probably since the original pay-per-view that they had. And this is what happened to kick off the entire evening. This didn't happen on the fourth match in the show. This happened to open the frigging show. We're going live right now to pay-per-view viewers, and we have an altercation going on right outside of the curtain with this man who's about to open up the show with the first match in the show. Thank God Samoa Joe was there to calm everyone down and give everyone back to professionalism. But again, he's gone. CM Punk has been fired, and Jungle Boy Jack Perry suspended, although we don't know the exact news of that at this point, but he's not going to be around for a while. The Young Bucks are kind of there. Kenny Omega's kind of there. They had just come back to play this sort of heel role themselves in this world. Bob, what do you have to say about that?
Well, just the couple key things we're glossing over. The CM Punk, these are key things to the CM Punk fans' perspective.
Sure, this is why I want to go through this. What is it?
That I think ultimately changed the perception of how people view the Elite. The video of the Young Bucks doing a victory lap in the ring, in a half, like at the night CM Punk gets fired, is just, look, you might not have liked the guy. There was backstage issues, but he was a huge draw for the company. And as we've seen, it's been a huge negative, his loss, to me, in terms of like the crowd,
we'll get there.
The energy.
We'll get there.
But that moment, there was also September 2nd, the Young Bucks victory lap in the ring. That moment will live in infamy in my mind. I'll never forget it. Whenever they lose, whenever they come up short, I'll be posting that victory lap. So, yeah.
Now, do you think that victory lap, because at the time, if I remember, didn't they come back as heels, or at least in Chicago, they knew they were going to be heels?
It was after the show. It wasn't on the show. They were just doing it for fun, and then they left the ring. They're like, wow, we're allowed on Collision, because they wouldn't let him on Dynamite. The only way Punk went on Dynamite after the fight was when the Young Bucks were at home. That's one episode he showed up, and the Young Bucks weren't there. It was so stupid. And if you look back at it, it's so ridiculous, the situation that it was. But now you're right. We're going to be talking about this way longer than I anticipated.
Again, we do not know who made the rules of who could show up when. We just know that those were the rules. And the Young Bucks decided as EVPs to take that victory lap because Punk was not there. I understand how Punk fans would get mad at that, but we are now fast forwarding a few months here, because we have, again, a lot of silence here, a lot of NDAs, a lot of lawyers speak, not a lot of people talking about things, the wrestling world hearing from the dirt sheets what is going on, what is happening, the rumblings, what happened, how could this, is he coming back to AEW, is this real, is this a shoot, is this a work?
Yeah, we all thought he was the devil for a while. I was convinced he was the devil in that stupid storyline. Yeah.
Right. Crazy. We have the devil, the MJF mask, or the Adam Cole mask that still hasn't paid off in AEW television thanks to untimely injuries. But we fast forward now to Survivor Series in the other promotion, in the WWE. This was in Chicago as well. Am I right?
Yeah, it's always in Chicago.
It's always in Chicago, because God forbid CM Punk gets on a plane. In Chicago, Survivor Series, November 25th, 2023. At this point, the cat is kind of out of the bag here. Just like AEW hinted at CM Punk returning on television with Darby Allin saying he was the best in the world weeks before CM Punk appeared in their big Chicago show. Randy Orton is the big return at Survivor Series until he isn't. CM Punk's music hits to end the show. Didn't have any factor in the match whatsoever. It's just a send-off. The man in the tight white T-shirt has returned. And Bob, your feelings as a WWE fan and a CM Punk fan on this evening. A, how elated were you? How surprised were you that this actually happened? He's actually on WWE TV. And then B, how big of a blow was this to AEW as a brand?
Well, just on my personal opinion, I was excited to see CM Punk back in WWE, obviously, but I started out like hating WWE like 5 years ago because it was Vince McMahon's product, and I wanted AEW to be this alternative. In my head, a CM Punk and Bryan Danielson led AEW against WWE would have been the most kick-ass thing. It was like a dream. Like that night, it was like I wanted that, but as it terms him firing him from the brand, its impact, I think it is a huge impact because people are still talking about it. We're still talking about it. Other people have done podcasts like this, remembering CM Punk's time in AEW, these retrospectives. It's like a myth. It just, I don't know how it turned into this ridiculous thing, but it hugely impacted the brand, in my opinion. Almost more so than the Cody Rhodes leaving. just because how much of a scandal and how ridiculous this was, and the stink it still has left. So yeah,
Now,
it negatively. I was excited to see him back in WWE, but in a perfect world, CM Punk would still be in AEW in
now,
my world against WWE, against Cody Rhodes, against all these people.
well,
Yeah,
I ask you about the blow to AEW because clearly today, we're not to spoil the future here. AEW is in a different place, a worse place than
yeah.
they were a year ago. This is why we're doing this retrospective here. So I ask you about the blow this was to AEW because I want to find out. Not to say they're a dead company; they're not a dead company, but where was the death blow? Out of all these timeline events, we're only on number 2 of a few events we're going to talk about
We
here.
haven't
Where
gotten to
was
it to me.
the death blow? Because I think CM Punk coming back to WWE, I think that hurts. That's a punch in the jaw. I absolutely think it's a recoverable
Yeah,
thing to AEW
yeah.
here. And I don't
Stars
think
come and go.
they recover.
CM Punk's a huge star, but stars come and go all the time. That shouldn't have been a big deal. It should have been unfortunate. This really sucks. Let's never mention him again. That should have been the move, but that wasn't the move. So let's continue, I guess. Right?
Now, to
Unless you
be
have like,
fair, that
yeah,
not everyone
yeah.
stayed silent on either side here, but let's
I
move
got you.
forward
I
now to
got you.
January 27th. We're now in
Yeah,
our year 2024, the Royal Rumble. CM Punk had done a house show at this point, but he hadn't really wrestled on
yeah,
WWE full blown TV in a meaningful match until he's in the Royal Rumble. He blows out his tricep in this match, but is back to not lose to Dusty Rhodes' son, as you told me off air just before this when I was
yeah,
misremembering how this went, and Cody Rhodes throws CM Punk over in a really memorable Royal Rumble, a true Royal
yeah.
Rumble where we did not know who was going to go over. What moves forward with Cody Rhodes, we all know how that story was finished. What moves forward with CM Punk is that big injury. However, Bob, again, going back to childhood hero here, Bob, CM Punk's in the Royal Rumble. How big was this payoff for you?
Well, I liked it. I liked that he didn't. I didn't want him to win because I'm old now. And as 12-year-old me, I would have been devastated that CM Punk didn't win. But now I didn't want him to win. I wanted Cody Rhodes to win for the story. But the impact of him getting injured in the match proved everybody right about his. He's not a durable wrestler anymore at all. He never has been. So he's an injury-prone guy. I knew that before this, but
Yeah.
that was a huge him getting injured at his first match. Hey, you look at his timeline, CM Punk's timeline. It's unbelievable. The guy's just always injured, but everybody's still talking about him. I don't understand how he does it. I don't understand how it works that way. But yeah, it was devastating that he got injured. Great to see him back, but pretty short-lived excitement that you find out the next day on Raw he's in a sling crying.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
so that
But
sucked.
even for me, again, the AEW fan, the man that I do not like CM Punk. Watching this match, this Royal Rumble match, I thought it was an excellent, excellent, excellent appearance by him in this
Yeah,
match. Again, injury that sucks. You can't help those. I thought this was, if we're going through the timeline, to me, this moment right here is the height of WWE. CM Punk timeline. Yes, CM Punk has done more since then. He's in a big feud coming up here, still fighting with the same man he starts fighting on this evening. This was the height of the CM Punk experience in the return to WWE. I thought it was fantastic. I also don't think this was the death blow to AEW, having CM Punk versus Cody Rhodes in the main event of the Royal Rumble to see who goes to WrestleMania. That's a pretty big punch that I think we kind of gloss over how meaningful
yeah.
that is, that these
That's
guys not that long ago were warring in the other promotion, but I still don't think it's the death blow. Do you?
No, we're not at the death blow yet. To me, the death blow is
Okay.
coming up in a couple more. Go ahead.
A couple big moments that we're going to fast
Yeah,
forward to because
yeah.
again, CM Punk's injured, so he's recovering. He's not really talking about a lot of things. AEW is trying to swim along in what they're doing, and yet April 1st, April Fool's Day, CM Punk appears on the Ariel Helwani podcast. Bob, you want to take us through what was talked about there?
Yeah, I'll just go over a little cliff notes. He gave his side of the story. Said Jack Perry approached him backstage. He couldn't talk about Brawlo because his NDAs. The NDAs in Tony Khan's company are unbelievable. It's like someone died. You got to sign an NDA for a skirmish backstage, but whatever. Moving on. So Jack Perry, he tells his side. He gets approached. He says Tony Khan's not a real boss. He's a nice guy. And he asked Tony Khan to handle the Jack Perry situation after he said real glass, cry me a river on the kickoff show against Hook. Tony Khan didn't handle it, according to CM Punk. So in CM Punk's story, Jack Perry says that he walks up to Tony Khan and says, do something about it. then walks back, doesn't do anything about it. Then there's a fight, and then he yells to Tony Khan, "I quit," right next to him. That's his series of events. I'm not sure I totally believe, even though I'm a CM Punk fan, I'm not sure I totally believe that exact series of events, but I saw the video. We'll get to that. But yeah, that basically was the gist of it. He talked about Hangman Page, about him going off script, about whatever the line was, about Colt Cabana getting fired. I forget the line, but the whole crux of the CM Punk's issues in AEW were, why are you spreading rumors and lies, according to him, about your top star, about your biggest guy? You're only hurting yourself. And that was basically the crux of it, him shifting blame from himself onto everyone around you, him. And now, if you believe him or not, that's up to you. I believe some of it. I don't believe all of it. I think there's plenty of blame to go around, and we'll get into that next. But that was the gist of the Ariel Helwani experience, his podcast appearance. Just none of it's my fault, was basically that whole podcast in summary. But he gave his side of the events, and I agreed with a lot of it. I didn't agree with a lot of his actions there. Before that, I didn't agree with his rant. At brought All Out 2023 or 2022 next to Tony Khan. He did a lot of shit wrong there, but that was that podcast. Just none of it's my fault.
I think right here is a pivotal point in the whole storyline, because to me, this is the sliding doors moment. This is the decision for you to walk either one way or the other way. Because if you let what I've found in my past, in my personal experience with people that I like to call narcissists, if you let them start digging, they're thinking they're burying you, but at the same time, they're digging their own grave. And I think if you would just let this CM Punk Ariel Helwani podcast live on in infamy as the last note of this sonata that we're going through right now, I think AEW would have come out not on top monetarily, but on top when we look back at this feud. Because as you said, CM Punk here deflected all blame. And there's blame to go on both sides. But CM Punk deflected all blame here. And as a narcissist that he is, came out saying, if AEW had just played ball, I'd still be there and everything would be fine. We both know that would never have happened with the road we were going down. Now, who was driving the car? I think there were many hands on that steering wheel, but one of those hands was CM Punk's, most certainly. Now, if this had been the end of it, I think we're in a completely different world in AEW. I truly think this right here, the next week, is the death blow to AEW, because just 10 days later, AEW comes out and releases the footage backstage. Now, here's the thing. If after this Ariel Helwani podcast, they just published the footage to the YouTube page, I think it would have been a billion times more effective than them saying, next week on Dynamite, we are going to release the footage live and in color, never before seen. And we're not going to tell you what it is. We're going to have the Young Bucks come out and kind of play like a heel and make this kind of sort of about FTR, their battle with FTR, even though it doesn't work in storyline. And we're just going to throw this footage. Like, if they didn't premiere this like it was Godzilla appearing on destroying Tokyo, then I think it would have been a lot more effective. But the footage we see does definitely dispute at least old Phil's story of how it went down. But it also is just... I mean, it's a tussle. Don't get me wrong. We made videos on this very channel where I'm saying, like, Phil went over the line here. He attacked a coworker, but at the same time, they played this up that Phil came in with a handgun and started shooting. And that's not the case that happened. And I believe right here, the decision to play up this footage to get that big rating pop. Again, CM Punk's not in the company anymore. And I know that's your biggest fault in all this. But to play this up like it was drama, daytime, soap opera TV, can't miss cliffhanger, that was the biggest mistake that AEW made, because it showed that the jilted lover was still not over the heartbreak. Bob, how'd you feel about this footage?
Yeah, this. If AEW doesn't get back to where they were a few years ago, this to me will be the moment that I will look back on, just because of what Tony Khan initially said he feared for his life. Okay, so if you're going to show the footage, you better damn well show the part where he feared for his life. Because if someone leans out over me and say, I fucking quit, and shouts in my face, I might crap my pants a little bit. I'm gonna be, oh Jesus! Well, I'm not, having a heart attack and fearing for my life. So that part didn't make sense to me. That was all legal talk from Tony, as it turns out, which is very frustrating, because they present themselves as this alternative brand and the alternative to WWE. That was a very WWE move. Firing CM Punk and then going and releasing the footage is all very WWE 12 years ago move. that just totally flipped. The coolness factor totally flipped in this one moment where you see these guys dressed in Dumb and Dumber suits and top hats showing footage of the fight with Jack Perry 8 months after he was fired because of a podcast interview is a little insane. It's just like CM Punk like has creative control over AEW whenever he talks. It's a little scary. That's a ridiculous place to put yourself in. What I would have done, I would have never mentioned CM Punk again. I would have said CM Punk did a lot of great things for us. He was a great champion. We loved his time here. It didn't work out. We wish him the best. Even behind closed doors, I fucking hate that guy. That's fine. But in front of the camera, wish him the best. There's way too many people. I've said this before, like I think on the show. Tom Cruise is the star of Mission Impossible. Yeah, I'm not going to see Mission Impossible with anybody besides Tom Cruise. If he gets in a fight with Simon Pegg on set, I'm not firing Tom Cruise. I'm firing Simon Pegg. So that's my whole point of this fight with Jack Perry. Tom Cruise is an asshole Scientologist weirdo behind the scenes, but he's a great actor. Everybody's going to see it.
That's an unfair description.
Right. So extra number, since Jack Perry's not that big of a star as Simon Pegg, you're right. So extra number 12.
No, I understand. CM Punk was the money man. He was bringing in the tickets.
He still is.
Overwhelming sales, overwhelming tickets, overwhelming box office booms. There's more than one Tom Cruise out there in AEW. And
yeah, but if Mission Impossible fired Tom Cruise and like hired some shithead and then released the video,
I think a better analysis is whatever the word is, metaphor, analogy. I think it's The Rock in Fast and the Furious. The Rock is clearly one of the biggest stars in Fast and the Furious. If The Rock got in a fight with one of the lower level, like Tyrese or Ludacris, I do think they fire The Rock because they still got Vin Diesel. They still got the rest of the crew. They still have the franchise Fast and the Furious. That's what my saying is. So yeah, you're losing The Rock, and The Rock's a big box office draw. But he wasn't there for the first few Fast and the Furious.
Okay, but this AEW is only a few years in. How many Fast and the Furious are there? 12 now? 38?
Yeah, I think Rock came in like 4 or 5 with Hobbs and Shaw.
So this would be firing him after his first appearance.
I'm just saying, I think Tom Cruise is different. CM Punk was not Tom Cruise because he did not originate the brand. If anything, Cody Rhodes was friggin' Tom Cruise.
I see what you're saying. Yeah,
CM Punk
it's not a perfect analogy.
If you take The Rock out of Fast and the Furious because The Rock starts big time and the littler stars, it's going to be a story and it's going to hurt the franchise. But I still think Fast and the Furious lives on just smaller and smaller windows. We got far off topic on this one. I think
AEW's Need for Speed, not Fast and the Furious. The Need for Speed starring Aaron Paul that everybody forgot about. But go ahead.
No, I think this was the death knell of what happened to AEW, the way they reacted here and the way this footage landed. However, your big takeaway from this footage before we move on was that Tony Khan did not fear for his life, and that's what made you that's what got you the most out of this footage. For me, what got me the most out of this footage was Phil lied and was the clear aggressor in this situation and deserved to be fired for this. Yes, he was a cunt. There is no other way to describe it. He was a cunt in this situation. That's what that footage showed to me. He was the aggressor. He wanted this fight to happen. He got this fight to happen, and he ruined the night for absolutely everyone involved.
Well, he didn't take over Jack Perry's body and go on camera and bring backstage issues on air. That was Jack Perry, and he can live with that forever.
It's not a backstage issue. We're going to disagree on that.
Yes, it was. Where was the real glass displayed on screen prior to that week?
If it's in the dirt sheets in the internet wrestling community, it's not a backstage issue.
Well,
it's part of
wrestling. No, it isn't.
Yes, it is. It's part of wrestling.
No, it isn't. Okay, so the dirt sheets reported that Bronson Reed. Jesus Christ, my apologies. Odyssey Jones was arrested for domestic violence. That was on the dirt sheet. So we're going to hear about that on Raw? No. That's incorrect.
Listen, if you are the heel, you're allowed to play into the heel stuff. And Jack Perry was we're always going to.
Okay, well, Hangman Page wasn't the heel when he went off script and brought up, "I'm trying to save you from, firing Colt Cabana, who hasn't been on screen."
We're not talking about that moment. I'm talking about specifically this event.
Well, I disagree.
We're never going to agree on that. That's why I didn't want to bring it up.
No. Here's my main takeaway. Honestly, my main takeaway from this was I don't like the nucleus of AEW. Okay. When the Young Bucks did that the EVPs and Tony Khan. How do you change that? To me, I don't like the nucleus and how they handled this situation. I thought it was pretty immature. It was very immature by CM Punk, how he handled it too. Fighting and the press conference, all of it was immature by CM Punk. But that's him. That's one guy. You're a company. You're supposed to have a big meeting and say, let's not fucking air this footage, guys. I know you heard about it. I know everybody's pissed. Let's try to just move on and act like it didn't happen. Just move on. I wish, but I understand in the moment, 9 days later, them being very upset about it, but it's just a big mistake because that was on TV. That's never going to live forever. That moment, that footage thing, that them sitting in that little back room with a bunch of shit behind them with that little 12-inch TV. I don't know what the fuck they were thinking with that. They made it like a comedy segment. But okay, moving on.
April 21st is the last moment on the timeline until we get to present day. April 21st. I think it's important because we are at AEW Dynasty. That's what they were building to. This Young Bucks airing the footage, and their match with FTR was at AEW Dynasty. And in that match, who comes back to save them? Was it that match? I forget. That whole build and that whole pay-per-view messes me up here. But either way, Jungle Boy Jack Perry returned. The scapegoat, Jack Perry. He had been missing for that long of a time. The man had been in New Japan, ripping up his AEW contract in front of the world, gets suspended at the same time that CM Punk gets fired, September 2nd, 2023, all the way to April 21st, 2024. The airing of the footage, the Ariel Helwani podcast, that is the reason Jungle Boy Jack Perry, the scapegoat, is back in our lives. And let me say, I think out of all of this, the person who got the shortest end of the stick was Jack Perry. Because he may have been getting paid by this, during this time. It's not like he was suspended with time on, he was still making money and still okay in real life. For him to miss 9 months of his wrestling career because that happened is flat out ridiculous to me. And I don't know what happened backstage with him arguing with Tony Khan in real life. I don't know. But I do think it made him a bigger star coming into AEW at this point. There's a reason why he's headlining the pay-per-view we're going to talk about in a few seconds here. But for him to miss that many months of his career, I think was a clear mistake by AEW, but this is the night he returns, Bob.
Yeah, I mean, the whole thing was a mistake. Them not capitalizing on Brawl Out, them not capitalizing on this. Like, if I know you had to be fired at this point because it's the second altercation, but I'm talking about Punk. But Jungle Boy, you look at the video, he went off script. He said some bullshit into the camera, pissed some guy off. They got into a skirmish. The way I thought it was going to be shown in the footage, I thought, like we said, CM Punk was going to have a gun or a knife, how it was betrayed. Jack Perry really didn't do anything besides talk some trash, and he got shoved and put in a headlock, and that's it. So I don't know why he had to miss 8-9 months, why it took so long. They could have done a lot with it. They could have benefited from this, turned this into a storyline. Wrestling is Jerry Springer in tights to me. They could have done a lot with it, and they didn't. So they just wasted Jack Perry's time. He finally came back at Dynasty, got a big pop. He was in the hoodie, unveiled him, smiled to the camera. It was a great moment. And yeah, he's a bigger star for it, but he's still living off of CM Punk and keeping that alive a little bit.
To wrap all this up before we get into the pay-per-view, I loved when Connor and Bruce Pritchard did this when they were talking about the Montreal Screwjob.
Oh, okay.
Bob, if you had to say at the end of it all, who screwed Punk?
Jesus Christ. Oh, this is so much. How do I parse the blame here? It's him and it's Tony above Young Bucks in the Elite because the Young Bucks in the Elite are talent. It's Tony. To me, it's Tony Khan for not having a grasp on the situation as a leader. Separating the brands is such a ridiculous idea. Let's just create a new show. Let's not squash this. Let's just create a fucking new show. So I'm gonna say CM Punk and Tony Khan screwed CM Punk, I guess. But I put most of the blame on because CM Punk has always been an asshole. There's millions and millions of stories about that. Tony Khan should have known that. I put a lot of the blame on Tony Khan for not knowing that you can't just collect talent like it's a video game and not. You gotta. These are people. They have egos. You gotta do stuff. He just missed it. He just missed it and let it get way, way, way too out of control over Colt Cabana. Mm-hmm. Your biggest draw you're probably ever gonna have, and he's gone over Colt Cabana. So that's to me like Tony Khan didn't know how to handle the situation. I appreciate what he was trying to do. He's trying to battle WWE, but he just didn't think of that these are not a spreadsheet. These are not like things that you can just punch in, and this is going to be a dream match. You have to talk to these people, and they have to be able to work together in some kind of fashion. And he just dropped the ball. So Tony Khan screwed CM Punk, in my opinion, but that doesn't really make sense because
I don't
CM
think
Punk
you're
is
wrong.
better off now. Yeah, go ahead.
I don't think you're wrong. I think there's a lot of blame to be thrown around. I don't think there's just one answer to this. But at the end of the day, adults need to act like adults. And at the end of the day, to me, Punk screwed Punk. Yeah, you can
Yeah.
say he came in and he's known to be an asshole. He definitely lived up to that title.
Do
And
you think the Young Bucks are leaders?
I'm not going to expect an old dog to learn a new trick or a zebra to change its stripes. But at the same time, just because people think you're an asshole doesn't mean you always have. I'm still going to blame you for being an asshole. Punk screwed Punk,
Yeah.
and you can't change my mind on that one. But
You
that is
can't
it.
change my. You cannot change my mind that the Young Bucks and Tony Khan are terrible leaders either. So there we
That
are.
is it.
That's the effects of CM Punk.
For
I
the
hate
CM
AEW
Punk
now.
retrospective.
Yeah.
Only took 31 minutes, Bob, but we got through
Jesus
it all.